Hello, everybody. Oh, I keep doing the same thing. I just keep leaving that thing in my face. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the final day of our seminar. I think we may have experienced a little bit of technical difficulties. So the live went on YouTube first, and then it was late on Facebook. Anyways, so I did an everyone tag. I am not 100% sure it actually worked. So we shall see. But welcome to everybody who is here already. Today we're going to be talking about the very last subject, and that is about how to actually carve out a sleep plan. Now, bear in mind that we have been doing these sessions over Zoom for a really long time. And one of the reasons is there's a whiteboard on Zoom, right? So we can literally draw it out in front of you and make little lines and squigglies and connections. We cannot do that on StreamYard. So we're going to do it verbally with a little bit less, drawing, if you will. Although, edit layout. No? Okay. I thought maybe there was a new whiteboard that was added to, the things we could use on StreamYard, but apparently not. But today we're going to be literally talking about how to make an actual sleep plan. And I mean a beautiful and well-detailed, step-by-step, day-by-day, moment-by-moment plan that literally tells you what to do. And oftentimes when I have calls with people and we tell them, we make customized sleep plans and what have you, they start asking me questions like, will it include, naps? Or just nights? Will it include what to do when the baby wakes up at night? Will it include this, or that? And we have to put this straight. When we talk about sleep plans at BeBaby, we're talking about documents that could have anywhere between like 8 pages to 45 pages. Okay. These are hefty, heavy duty sleep plans we're talking about, which means if we have a newborn, kind of like the scenario we spoke about yesterday, where there's reflux and there's colics and there's gassiness and there's, milk intolerances and what have you, all of that, like how to actually fix the reflux, how to handle the colics, how to, remove the milk and monitor the response, how to monitor the eczema going away, as well as how to put your baby to bed, how to respond when he wakes up at night, when to put him down for a nap, how to put him down for a nap, what to do if he does this and you do this and he does this and you do this. Like everything is included in those sleep plans. So it's not just, put your baby to bed at this time and, shush him or pat him or that sort of thing, right? It's very, very detailed of a sleep plan. So they're very hefty and they can have a lot of pages. And so, yes, we do, one-on-one sessions with you to like explain exactly what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. But we will give to you everything in writing as well, because it's a lot of information. And at 3 a.m, when you are exhausted and your brain is only like half working, you cannot be trying to remember, the ABCs of your plan. So we give you a very detailed and hefty working document that you can implement. Now, as a type A, if we have any type A's in the room, these plans are just something gorgeous. I call them orgasms. Okay. When you're a type A and you love structure and organization and clear documentation that's well branded too, and that's easy on the eyes, you call that an organigasm. Why? Organization, an orgasm, organigasm. Okay. If you're not type A, do not judge us. It's like yoga for our mind. It's like meditation for a type A. So the goal of today is to talk about how do you go ahead, making these orgasm plans, okay? What do they actually look like? How are they actually structured? How they are structured will depend, okay? It basically depending on the sleep problem at hand, if nutrition is impacted, if naps are impacted, if development is impacted, whatever, or breastfeeding is impacted, all of those little things or big things will be part of the plan. So there is no one plan that has the exact same structure. Now, the one part that we're really going to focus on today, because obviously we're not going to walk through, how to make a breastfeeding plan and how to make a this, and that plan. The part we're going to focus on is how to actually make a sleep plan. So the portion of the plan that literally says, um, do this when you put your baby to bed, etc. So behind that, the most important part is, well, what are going to be the interventions? What is the theory going to be, okay, on this particular sleep plan? Now, I'm just trying to pull up our live right now because we have somebody who's live with us right now that we're actually going to pull up on camera. If I can find her. You know what? I will send you a link, my friend. Instead, it will be easier. I'm going to invite someone who I know is watching to actually join us and talk about this with us. I'm just going to send her a quick link if you don't mind. So remember how we spoke about, choosing, what interventions we're going to be doing in a sleep plan. It's not just about the age of your child. It's not just about, following basic rules and determining, what will go into the plan. The very first start, always, no matter what we are doing and what type of plan we're going to be doing, is an evaluation, first and foremost, right? So when we're doing an evaluation, we're looking at basis, right? We're looking at the sleep history from birth until now, because we kind of want to build a timeline, right, of when things happened, a little bit like a crime investigator. And then we'll look at nutrition. We'll look at overall health. We'll look at development. And then, based on the child's age and based on what we've accumulated so far, other things, right? So, if we know that this baby has a lot of tummy issues, right, and is a newborn, we're going to spend a lot more time evaluating that, right? If there is no seeming problems with gastrointestinal health, we're kind of like going to move ahead to the next thing. If we're talking about a toddler or a preschooler, we might talk more about, behavior, anxieties, night terrors, how they're learning, how they're interacting with their siblings. Have they started a new daycare? Is there any change in their life that we should be aware of? And so on and so forth. Okay. So an evaluation has like a basic structure, but when we're talking about programs like Inner Circle and Up, where evaluations are face to face, that's where we get into the very personalized evaluations, because at that point they change based on who we're talking to, about whom we're talking to, and the answers that you are giving us. Okay, so we have one program where we send out a form and you fill in an evaluation. It's called the Mini Plus, and then based on that evaluation we may send you additional questions based on what you've told us to like dig a little bit deeper. Our preference is the programs like Inner Circle and Up, because we have a face-to-face evaluation. So we can actually have a conversation with you and say, okay, you're talking about, there seems to be colics, there seems to maybe be some silent reflux, there seems to be XYZ. Let's dive into that. Let's ask more specific questions. From that, we can make the sleep plan. So what we're going to do today is we are going to take a very, 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 very simple scenario, right? And sort of work through the process of what that looks like. How do you take the information from that evaluation, right? And then pair that to interventions and actually create a sleep plan from it. We're not going to take a super complicated case, because obviously, if we took a super complicated case, we'd be here forever. But we're going to take a very basic case just to like show you the process, right? And so remember how yesterday as homework, I asked you to start writing down a list of sleep disruptors that you've identified through the seminar that may be at play for your child. This is where that list really comes, into practice. Now I have the ability to make comments here. And I just want to see, okay, I can read. If I'm going to send out a little hello in capital letters here, and I want you to let me know if in our Facebook group, you guys can see it. No, I think you can only see it on YouTube. Okay, so we're going to do it without the comments. Okay. So what I want to do is I want our friends here, everybody who's watching, when we are doing this evaluation together and we're talking about these interventions together or these sleep disruptions together, I want you to type it in the comments because I cannot type it in the comments through StreamYard. There's pros and cons to Zoom and there's pros and cons to StreamYard. And I'm very undecided and divided between these two platforms. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to introduce to you our little man that we're going to be talking about today. And I'm actually going to open a Word document if I can, if I may. I cannot. I'm going to open an email. Okay. I'm going to open an email and I'm going to write my notes in there. Okay. If it lets me. Oh, my phone was clicking on it. Okay. So I might actually be able to show you that. Let me see. Let's see. New layout. Press Shift 5. Okay, that's not going to work. I'm not going to be able to show you. I'm sorry. Okay, so we're going to do without. I'm trying these new changes in this platform. So everybody's ready to do this evaluation with me. Our little man, our patient, our client, rather, is going to be called Leo. Okay, his name is Leo, and Leo is an 8-month-old little dude. Okay, we're going to stick to our 8-month-old because it has seemingly been the person we've been talking about since beginning. Okay, so Leo is 8 months old and he's a little man, and his mom has come to us because although he's the cutest baby in the world, he's never been much of a great sleeper. He doesn't seem to have an affinity for it. So when Leo was born, we're doing this evaluation with mom, and we're starting really from day one. Leo was born on time. He was not born premature. There's nothing there, that we should be concerned about. And when he was born, he was making about 3-hour stretches. Not too bad for a newborn. However, he did seem to be very, very uncomfortable around bedtime. Bedtime was very, very difficult. Okay, so we can identify in our evaluation that bedtime as a newborn was actually quite difficult. And it would take a good 2 hours for mom to be able to put him to sleep. And what seemed to happen is he was very agitated. He was uncomfortable. He would go on and off the breast. He would cry a lot. She would try and burp him. She knew that burping was important, but nothing really came out. He just seemed very, very unhappy. He did have spit up, but it wasn't massive amounts of spit up either. And he was waking up every 3 hours, and the naps, going down for naps was difficult. But if she kept him in her arms as a newborn or even in a baby carrier, right, he was doing pretty well. Okay. So it wasn't too bad. Sleeping 3 hours, it's just that getting him to sleep was kind of a difficulty. And then around 4.5 months or so, instead of doing 3-hour stretches, at about 3 in the morning, he started waking up every hour. Okay. So at 3 in the morning, he started switching to every hour instead of every 3 hours at that point, right? So there was an actual, like, his sleep, instead of getting better with age, seemed to like get worse at that point, right? Um, at about 6 months or so, mom finally thought, we've got it. She started solids, and all of a sudden, putting him to bed started taking about an hour instead of two, right? So bedtime took an hour instead of two. So mom was like, okay, we're going to get there. We're finally getting there. And she had started solid. She thought him going to bed earlier or easier at bedtime was because of the solid. So she expected naturally for the nighttime stretches to get longer. Unfortunately, they didn't. It just kind of stayed the same. He would do a 3-hour stretch and another 3-hour stretch. And then at about 3 in the morning, he would start waking up every hour pretty much on the dot. And the most frustrating part for her from all of that is despite the fact that, from 3 a.m. on, he's not sleeping so well, his naps remain sort of bad, right? The naps there's no schedule to them. It's just kind of like where he may fall. And it's always a contact nap too, right? And it can be a 30-minute nap if she dares to breathe or cough or move, or if she's lucky, she'll get a fairly decent nap. He seems to sleep okay if he's in the car seat. If she's lucky enough to, like, he's tired and he gets in the car seat, he usually actually screams at the beginning. He seems uncomfortable and then he falls asleep. So that's what we know, borderline with Leo. This is like the story of the beginning of, his sleep problems and where we start. Okay. So just from there, does anybody have an inkling of the things that we should focus on moving forward in our evaluation with Leo? Do you see any red flags? Do you see anything that you're like, oh, this, absolutely, right? Because when we start an evaluation, we always start with, well, summarize for me what's been going on with sleep. And then from there, we move forward. So, can anybody see from the story I've given you so far about Leo what direction we might need to like investigate in, what direction we might need to look in a little bit more deeply when it comes to Leo? Again, remember, we're using a simple case. I'm not going to give you anything, super complicated. So you don't have to go digging super deep. It's going to be fairly superficial, but there's going to be like a few different directions, right? So the fact that it's only contact naps, um, what does that tell you? Or what, direction may you want to go look into? Patterned wakes. Okay. Rochelle mentions patterned wakes. All right. And I sent you an invitation, by the way, Rachel, so that you can join the room, but it seems to be having a little bit of technical issues, so it might be difficult to do. So patterned wakes. Okay. So I'm gonna do this with you. Okay. We're gonna start at when he was a newborn, and it would take about 2 hours to be able to put him down to sleep. He seemed to struggle. He seemed to be really uncomfortable. He can only take contact naps. Very, very difficult to put him down. And that to me means I need to ask questions, because the fact that he was so uncomfortable, right? It would take a good 2 hours to get him down. But once he was down, he was able to do a pretty decent stretch. But then again, during naps, again, it's really about putting him down that it was so difficult. Is maybe he was uncomfortable, maybe there was something wrong. And when she started solids, so a little bit thicker foods, right? The going to sleep problem seemed to go away. However, the stretches didn't get longer. So to me, it kind of rings the alarm of, well, I think this baby might have had a little bit of silent reflux when he was a newborn. So, based on that, I asked a whole bunch of questions, right? I would ask a whole bunch of questions to really determine if it is actually silent reflux that he had. And now I can put on my timeline that the problems began as a newborn. He had silent reflux. Okay. Now, because he had silent reflux, he probably took slightly smaller feeds, right? And as a result of those smaller feeds, that's why his wakes or his pattern was, every 3 hours of a wake, right, to feed. And it never progressively got longer because his feeds didn't progressively get longer. So now my next question for her is, now that he's taking solids, now that we're assuming that the content in his stomach is a little bit thicker and perhaps, that reflux has timed out. Is he taking in a lot of milk or is he still snacking? Right. And what she tells us is he's taking good solids during the day. And then we're going to dive deeper into those solids. Right. However, she's noticed that in terms of milk breastfeeding, he's still kind of snacking. He breastfeeds really, really, really often during the day, but they're really, really short sessions. And then he also wakes up, every hour, especially after that 3 hour mark, and he's still snacking. Okay, he's not taking in all of his milk content during the day because he's just like snacking on a 24-hour period. Now, when we looked at the solids together, we found out that she did purees with him and she followed the old schedule because that's what her pediatrician told her. So, although our little Leo is 8 months, he's taking mostly fruit purees, vegetable purees, cereals, and oats. And he's taking about 2 meals a day. Okay, so she does like breakfast and like around dinner, she'll do another set of purees with him. Do you see a potential problem there? Anybody? Lack of protein, exactly, lack of protein. So he's getting vegetables, he's getting fruits, he's getting, carbs, but he's not getting any protein, really. So even though, he's getting older and he's eating more solids, it has thickened, the content in his stomach and arguably compensates for his snacking during the day. And as a result, he's going to bed a little bit more easily. He's giving us still 3 hour stretches in the beginning of the night, which is not great. But at that point, those are patterned wakes, right? But the 1 hour wake ups at that point are also because as of 3 in the morning, he's run out of carbs. And so he's relying on protein and he simply is not getting enough, right? So it's a mix of pattern wakes, right? From this being a pretty long set pattern. And then it's a mix problem of also low protein intake. And we also have a concern that we cannot just eliminate all of his night wake ups because he's snacking on milk through a 24-hour period, which means literally 50% of his milk intake, if not even a little bit more, due to the frequency of his wake ups, are actually happening at night. Okay. So we're not concerned that he's consuming too much milk and that could cause low iron. We're not too concerned about that part. However, he might actually have a little bit of low iron because he's not getting a whole lot of protein. So unless mom is really, really good with the leafy greens, we might actually have a little bit of low iron there too. Okay, so now we're seeing a little bit of a pattern here in terms of problems. We know that the reflux is gone, but he's had a little bit of a history of digestive problems. So I'm going to ask mom, what does his poop look like? Does he strain to poop? Is he constipated? Is he having any type of diarrhea? We're lucky enough in this case, it's a simple case, no constipation, no diarrhea. He doesn't seem to be straining. It's a nice consistency, right? Good information there. But one thing she has said is she hasn't actually started him on water very much. He's still breastfeeding a lot, which is fantastic, but he's not consuming any water during the day. Now, that as we, look at him taking a whole lot of oat, right? And a whole lot of cereal and not taking a lot of water. And then he's snacking, and most of his milk is coming during the night, not during the day. One of my concerns is that, this could lead to his poops being a little bit dehydrated over time, right? And it might be contributing to him snacking so much on milk throughout the day. So 50% of his milk is at night. And then if we look at his age, if we look at his development, what else should we be looking at? Think about day 3. What did we talk about on day 3? We talked about sleep regressions. Is there a sleep regression that might be close that I should maybe keep an eye for? What developmental changes are about to happen for Leo? Regression. And what does that regression involve? What might be happening during that regression that may cause some issues for us, or for Leo rather? Separation anxiety. Exactly. So he's about 8 months old. He's right around the cusp of that 9 month sleep regression, right? He has been waking up for a very long time for feeds overnight. So my next question is going to be, tell me about Leo. Does he play independently with his toys? Have you played peekaboo recently? Have you noticed anything different? Does Leo let you pee alone in the bathroom? Have you noticed that, you have to sit right next to him when you're feeding him food, right? Have you noticed an increase in separation anxiety? And she said, you know what? Actually, yes. I have noticed an increase in separation anxiety, and that has been my big reticence at contacting a sleep consultant because I felt like he was getting super attached to me, and it might be a breastfeeding issue. It might be because I'm still breastfeeding him, which we know is not true, right? We know for a fact that breastfeeding does not cause these issues, but we know that he's developing object permanence. So, one of the things that we have to add to our evaluation is separation anxiety. Then, yes, teething might be a possibility at this age. Now, we spoke to his mom. She hasn't noticed any teeth coming out. She hasn't noticed any more salivation. She hasn't noticed redness in his cheeks. She hasn't noticed any low grade fevers. He's generally been in a pretty good health. So, we're keeping it simple. That's our eval for him. Okay. Again, we're doing a very simple case here. So here's what we know. This baby had silent reflux as a newborn, and it led to him struggle for 2 hours to go into bed. He developed snacking, right, on milk as a result of that. And to this day, still wakes up every hour as of 3 in the morning and still snacks on milk throughout the day and night. We also know he's probably not getting enough protein. He may possibly have low iron, which is contributing to his sleep being superficial. And we know he doesn't take a whole lot of water. And we also know that he has separation anxiety. So here's my question. If this were your baby and you decided to go online and you decided to find a standardized sleep plan. Okay, so you're looking at Cry It Out, or you're looking at Ferber, or the chair method, or what have you, right? And you chose, what was appropriate for the age of your child, and you implemented it. Would it work? If Leo was your baby, a pretty simple case, but it's Leo's your baby, you know a little bit more about what's going on right now. If you did, I don't know, the chair method, right? Or even if you did Cry It Out, would it work? Why would it not work? We now know that yes, he has patterned wake ups. We now know he uses breastfeeding to fall back asleep at night because he doesn't know how else to do. We know he has patterned wake ups because that involves feeding. But we also know that if we stop feeding him dramatically overnight, he's going to be hungry because he's getting 50% of his milk content at night. So you cannot do that. We also know that he's still going to have superficial sleep because he's lacking iron, and he's still going to wake up at 3 in the morning and struggle with sleep at for the rest of the night because he has low protein. So we know that in his case, reflux is no longer an issue, but we know as well that separation anxiety is. So we have to address every single one of those active sleep disruptors in our sleep plan, and then we know it's going to work. So let's start with the fact that he's snacking. Okay. So the fact that he's snacking, we're going to look at this mom's solids meal schedule. Okay. So we're actually going to create a nice little schedule with breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then we're going to start introducing snacks after that. And in this particular case, we're going to tell mom, I need you to feed him milk. And when he lets go because he's snacking, I want you to set him up, wait a little bit, and continue to feed him. I want to make sure he's getting enough milk. Then I'm going to ask you to wait an hour. We're going to make a schedule for that and to do solids. With your solids, you have to have a vegetable, a complex carb, ideally, so that it can last a little bit longer, and some protein. Now, the other thing we're going to do is after dinner, we're going to introduce a high carb snack just before bed, like a Greek yogurt, for example, to try and really fight back on that a high protein snack. Sorry, I think I said a high carb snack, high protein snack just before bedtime to fight the fact that he's struggling with that protein. Okay. Then, because we're timing, his milk, he's going to take milk between, right? He's probably going to have those snacky moments, but we're making sure that he's getting a pretty high content of milk throughout the day. Now, we're not going to eliminate all of his night wake ups overnight because we have to switch the milk over, right? So, at first, what we're going to do is we're going to make a very progressive implementation to tackle the pattern wake ups. Okay. So, again, remember, we're going to use an intervention that will help him fall asleep, but is of lower importance to the brain than food is or sleep. So, in this particular case, we don't have a history of co-sleeping, right? We don't have that history. He has been, in his own room. So we have kind of a big selection of choice that we can use there. And mom chooses one of the many that we offer her. So a method of her helping him fall back asleep. But we're going to put a reset, which means the first wake up around midnight, we're going to let her actually continue to feed him and then do the intervention. And then one of the wake ups at 3 in the morning, we're actually going to let her feed him again and do the intervention after. For the other wake ups, we're going to have her do the intervention first. And if it fails within 15 minutes, to do a short feed and then re-implement the intervention. Okay. Then we're also going to start giving him more water throughout the day. But on day 2 and then day 3 and then day 4 and then day 5, what we're actually going to do is those interventions where we intervene and then give milk if it fails after 15 minutes, we're going to switch the give milk after 15 minutes to give water instead. So now he's really only getting milk at the midnight and at the 3 a.m. feed, slowly but surely, right? We're making sure that we're increasing the solids, increasing the protein, increasing the iron during the day, increasing his water intake, increasing his milk intake during the day, and decreasing it overnight, slowly but surely. And then by the 5th day, we're able to switch out that 3 a.m. feed as well for water. And the other feeds in between that we had with interventions, those has stopped. So he's really only waking up midnight and once at 3 in the morning. And then we switch that one for water as well. We wait 3 days, that wake up has gone away. And then we lastly do the one at midnight and the same thing happens. Now, during that process, we do contact naps. We're saving the naps. We've given her a nap schedule. We tell her how long he should be sleeping for every nap. And we're basically just saving the naps because we just don't want him to become overtired, because this is kind of what's leading him to wake up at that midnight zone, right? It's just he should be in his deepest state of sleep at that point, right? But he's not going to the deepest state of sleep because he's overtired. So by saving the naps, then we'll see that 1 out of 2 days, that wake up just self-eliminates. And then after we've done all this, we can eliminate that last one. And then we wait a week. We wait a week of him having been sleeping through the night consistently to see what happens to the naps. Okay. And then after that, we use a variation of that, but in a simpler portion, right? Or whatever intervention we were using at night on the naps. But on the naps, it's very different. We're going to do a reset every 15 minutes at the beginning. And then after 3-4 days, we're going to move that to 30 minutes. A reset is when you're doing an intervention to calm a baby, to put him down and to get him to sleep. And it's just he's not responding yet to it. You do whatever works instantly, which in a lot of cases will be, feeding the baby. So you're here and you're intervening with the baby and you're doing what's necessary to get him to fall asleep without a feed, because that's the ideal circumstance. But at the beginning, if he's it's not working after 15 minutes, then we offer what is called a reset, where you might just feed your baby to sleep. Or if the intervention you were doing before was rocking to sleep, you're going to resume rocking for a certain amount of time to get the baby back to sleep, right? So then we've worked on the naps, right? So Petra says, I'm always amazed when you say that this is a straightforward case and you start to explain rocket science. um, well, it can get a lot more complicated than that, right? We're using a baby who has a fairly straightforward situation. This is what we'll call, basic sleep training or basic sleep education or entry level sleep education. Then we get more complicated cases where we have to go to like intermediate sleep education or advanced sleep education, where we're just talking about basic transformer plans, right? That have, within one intervention for one night, there's like 20 interventions stuck in there at different moments. On the back end, when I explain it like this, it sounds very hefty. You cannot give a mom who is sleep deprived this super complicated, detailed thing. So then you take your super complicated plan and you wrap it up in a more recognizable sleep approach that has a little bit of a pattern to it, a little bit of like, you do this and this and this. So you take all of your interventions, you take a framework of an approach, right? And then you just remove the insides of it and stack in your interventions as long as it actually fits to make a plan that has a little bit of cohesion. The envelope is not that important. It's to make it easier to follow. It's to make a tired brain be able to understand where it's going. It's the interventions that are stacked within it that are so important. That's why when we're making a plan, it can have 8 pages or it can have 45 pages. Because if we get to super complicated plan, one day one, just the nighttime or the bedtime intervention could have a whole page, right, to itself. We try and condense those as much as possible and basically hide interventions in a global story, right? So that you're not even knowingly aware that you're doing, let's say, 5 different interventions at the same time. You feel like you're just doing this simple pattern thing, but it's actually helping what we need to do. That's why oftentimes a sleep plan will say, today, let's just save our naps and we're going to eat at this time, that time, and that time, and we're going to eat these things. Very, very simple. Tomorrow, we're just going to change this, or that. On the third day, we're going to change this, or that. So the parents are doing one step at a time. They're feeling really good about it because they're able to follow those instructions really easily and really well. And they're seeing progress and they're seeing change, and their baby is healthy. And their brain is also understanding, oh, I've now eliminated my child's hunger at night. And thus, I'm now more ready to sleep educate my baby, right? Whereas if we were to do everything at the same time, we could potentially do that. But the parent's brain would not be able to see, like, okay, I've eliminated the hunger and now I'm doing this. So, depending on the situation, we might actually condense it for the parent or we might separate it in multiple little steps. Okay. So, that's how you end up making a sleep plan. And that is why, if you come to me and you send me a paragraph this long, right, about your baby, can I just give you a few tips and tricks and fix it? No, right? We recently had a mom join our program. She's known us for a long time and she has a newborn. And she basically came into the program and told us what was going on with her newborn. And it was affecting sleep, but it's very difficult. Sleep consultants don't touch newborns oftentimes because you can't sleep train a newborn, right? You can't just be like, let him cry for 5 minutes and come back and check it, right? You can't do that. So she had very little faith that we could actually resolve the sleep right now, but she wanted to make sure that she was headed in the right direction. And we just kind of let her believe that because I know her, right? And within her 3 days, her baby was now sleeping super duper long stretches and was at the ideal sleep that we want at that age. just like that. Sometimes super complicated problems can be fixed really quickly. And sometimes sleep problems that seem simple, baby wakes up at 3 and doesn't want to go back to sleep. It's the only wake up. It's just that he doesn't go back to sleep. Seems pretty simple. That is often one of the most complicated types of wake ups to actually fix properly. Because if you're doing something like cry it out, you might get that baby to stop screaming every time he wakes up at 3 in the morning. He's still going to wake up at 3 in the morning, probably, right? Or you'll get him to sleep in for a month, maybe two, and then it'll start again, right? And it gets earlier and earlier and earlier as that time progresses. So, this is why it's so incredibly important to ask all of the right questions. You might think, oh, no, 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 it's just a sleep problem that my baby has. Look at his nutrition, look at his milk intake. Don't assume that the milk intake is a result of the sleep. The sleep could be a result of the milk intake. Look at what he's eating, when he's eating it. Look at his poop. Is he congested? Is he drinking water? Look at everything and do yourself a favor. Write it down. You cannot hold all of that information in your brain on a sleep deprived brain and try and make sense of it. It is way too much. Okay. Like, even as I'm doing a simple case right now, and I'm not, writing it down on a board like I usually would, I had to like pause and be like, okay, am I forgetting anything? And I ended up writing a few things on a piece of paper just to keep my mind straight. And this is a simple situation, right? If you're doing your own baby, which allows you to, which often causes you not to see things as clearly as somebody else would, right? And you're trying to keep track of all of these different things on a tired mind, that is a lot of balls to juggle at the same time. That's a lot of information to not only remember, but like put in order and actually organize and do something about. So, pretend for a minute that you're a sleep consultant. Take out a nice piece of paper, and start writing it down. And then once you have all your disruptors, make a timeline of it and categorize the disruptors in, this is, nutrition related, this is development related, this is sleep related. Okay, reflux, this is old, it's no longer, a problem. I can eliminate it, but it caused that overtiredness. That was the starting point of it. So it's no longer relevant, but at least now I know why this happened. And if I have maybe I can prevent it, right? But write the whole list, put it on a timeline, categorize it by gastrointestinal or sleep problem or whatever, and then start with the easiest. If there's a nutritional issue that you outline, start there. That's the easiest way, right? Give yourself a quick win, right? If there's you see that there's a lack of routine, there's a lack of schedule, start there. Give yourself a quick win. And then watch to see small little improvements. Before you then start your interventions for night sleep. Another thing I really encourage you to do is log it. Write down every night. One wake up at 10 lasted, 13 minutes. The next day, one wake up at 10 lasted 8 minutes. And then the overall total of wake time, like the 10 minutes plus the 13 minutes plus the 10 minutes, that you had that time for like 45 minutes that night, and watch a progression. Because I've had people who are doing gentle sleep plans, for example, and after 3 days, they're like, it's not working. And then I look at their sleep logs and I'm like, your baby used to be awake for a total of 5 hours per night. And he's now awake 45 minutes a night after 3 days. I would argue you're doing pretty good, right? But when you're sleep deprived, your brain is not going to feed you your progression. It's not going to feed you that positivity. No, it's going to feed you the negative. It's going to tell you you're failing. You're doing it wrong. It's not working. Don't listen to it. Log it so that you can see it, okay? So that you can see your own success and your own progression. It might seem complicated at first. This is why I'm telling you, you have to write it down. You have to regroup it in little categories. And then if you can't, make a full sleep plan like we would, because it's, quite complicated, tackle one thing and then another thing, right? Sam says, most times it's just easier when someone else takes a look at your situation. When you are in the thick of sleep deprivation, it can be hard to see what needs to be changed. Yes, a really great example is, we're sleep consultants. We have children. When Samantha Joe here had a child that was struggling with sleep, even though she was a sleep consultant, she reached out to me. Because the reality is, it's easier for somebody else to look at it and to not miss anything. It's a little bit the best example of this, and I'm the worst at this. If I write, and everybody on my team knows this, if I write an email or a text, I always have to send it to my staff for them to reread it. Because if I reread it to notice mistakes, my brain will show me what I want to see. So there's going to be like typos that are super visible that I clearly know how to write, but my brain will not show me that word with a typo. It will show me the word the way I want to see it, right? Because I wrote it. Well, the same way, if you're looking at your sleep situation, your brain's going to be like, that's not important. That's not important. That's not important. This is important, right? It's really hard. So if you have a colleague, right, who's a sleep consultant, it's just easier to be like, sit down with me, evaluate this for me, like make me a plan, because it's from an outsider's view. Your brain is not biased, right, to eliminate things that it shouldn't eliminate. So if I were having, a sleep problem with one of my kids, even though I'm a great sleep consultant, I'd probably ask one of our BeBaby consultants to work on it with me, because, well, by then I'd be sleep deprived and my brain would not be functioning so well. So, to start with, not great. But second of all, I wouldn't be able to see it properly, right? Whereas one of my consultants would. And the same thing for Samantha. She can fix your sleep problems, no questions asked, right? But if she was struggling with sleep tomorrow night, and she might very well, contact me and say, Sam or Jen or somebody else on our team, say, hey, can you just help me, walk through this or look at this a little bit differently? Because you might be looking at things and you're like, I haven't missed anything. It's perfect. But like my email full of typos, you've missed a ton because your brain is not showing you that, right? And it's like the bias of your brain, and you're sleep deprived. So your brain is trying to oversimplify things for you to a point where it prevents you from having a plan that actually works. Okay. So as you're doing this, take some time. Take some time. And perhaps maybe if you've had a friend who's following the seminar with you, do it for each other. Or even better, book a call with us. Get a sleep consultant, get a tailored plan, get guidance day to day in how to implement it and how to tweak it and how to make sure that it actually works for your baby. Because if you're looking at this and you're like, I think I have a pretty complicated situation on my hands and I don't feel like I can make sense of this on my own, that's okay. There comes a point, right, where it's normal to get help. I can probably change the oil on my car. I don't, but I think I have in the past. But if my motor starts having, fumes coming out of it, I'm not going to YouTube it. I'm not. I'm going to go see a mechanic and I'm going to say, look, I don't, please fix this, right? Um, Vano, how can you tell if a newborn has sleep issues? My baby is feeding every 90 minutes, also at night. She seems to be sleeping less during the day than before. Sometimes she's quite restless, sleeping at night. Then she will be quiet again. Sleep periods, max 3 hours when fed formula, 90 minutes on breast milk. Does it make sense to get a plan for her, or is this normal? She's 4 weeks old. 90 minutes is a very, very, very short sleep span, even for a newborn at night. So that for me would signal that there's something that is not headed in the right direction. Especially if you're saying that she's sleeping even less during the day than before and she seems restless. To me, it sounds like there's a sleep problem that's like building up. and it's going to like head into the wrong direction. So in that case, I would definitely 100% look at something like Inner Circle with us. Um, so that we can figure out what's going on, make a sleep plan right now to get her optimally where we want her right now as a newborn, and really well positioned sleep plans at other times, like 4 months for that 4 month sleep change to make sure she progresses really well through that. And at 6 months, when we want to introduce solids and transition to sleeping through the night, and so on. You're still early. So, like I say, you can sniff the not the fumes, the French in me today when I'm learning Spanish and it's ruining my English. The You should call the firefighters when you smell the smoke, not when the whole house is on fire, right? You're smelling the smoke. This is smoke. This is like red flags where a sleep consultant, if you had joined BeBaby expecting, for example, one of our consultants would have been like, hold up, what's going on here? Right? That's smoke. The best thing to do is to always call the firefighters, right? Call for help before the smoke turns into the whole house has burned out. Now, you know, we can still fix it, but it's going to be, more complicated, way more exhausting, and there's more, complications at that point. So definitely, if you're noticing that you're every 90 minutes at this point, I would be booking a call at that point, because it's not a 90 minutes is short, right? A newborn who's doing 4-hour stretches, not too concerned about it. I would, make sure that everything is optimized so that the baby can naturally, transition into better and better, and keep an eye out for that. 90 minutes is pretty short. It's really, really, really short. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining us during the seminar. We had a ton of fun. It's a little short for us, 5 days. We're used to doing 9 days, so I kind of feel like we're not done, but we're at the end of our 5 days, so we have to be done. But I'm a little bit sad that we're done. But that being said, we'll try and probably schedule a webinar for next week about a different subject. Apparently, there's a lot of people who've been asking about early morning wakes. So maybe we'll do a little webinar on early morning wakes next week. Don't be a stranger. Stay inside of the BeBaby family group. Share with us your progress. As a post for today, if you want to, it's not a homework, you don't need to. But if you want to post in our group how you enjoyed the seminar, anything you're grateful for, or give a shout out to your resource person to thank them for taking the time to accompany you during the seminar, it's always greatly appreciated. Don't forget to book calls with us if you haven't already, and you would like to talk to us about determining if sleep consultancy is the right thing for you. The one thing I'll say is, you'd call a mechanic to fix your car, you'd call a plumber to, help you if you were struggling with, your toilet being blocked. It will happen. Your child will flush some foam alphabet letters. It will happen. So do have a plumber on speed dial. But the point is, as you would call a professional for those things, you really shouldn't have any hesitation to calling a professional if your baby's not sleeping, right? Like you would have zero hesitation to bring your baby to the doctor if you suspected that he had an ear infection, right? You do what you got to do. You don't need to be in survival mode all the time. It's totally unnecessary. It's the most harmful, damaging myth that has been fed to moms for, years and years and years and years. And I swear, one mother at a time, we're going to change that at BeBaby. So spread the word, and invite your friends. If you see a mom who's struggling with sleep, connect them with us, connect them with your resource person. We're always happy to help. Thank you for so much for coming and joining us. And hopefully we'll see you again.